She arrived in a strange town with one small suitcase, a faded wedding dress, and a heart full of fear. She had been sent hundreds of miles away to marry a man she had never met, believing she had no choice but to accept whatever life waited for her. But when she finally reached the ranch, the man she was supposed to marry was not there. Instead, a quiet cowboy stood at the gate and told her something she never expected to hear. "You don't belong to anyone, not even me." What happened next changed both their lives forever. Before we begin this emotional Old West story, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable frontier story. Now let's get started. In the spring of 1887, a young woman named Clara Bennett stepped down from a dusty train in the small frontier town of Red Hollow, Wyoming Territory, clutching a worn leather suitcase against her chest. She was 24 years old, but the tiredness in her eyes made her look older. For 3 long days, she had traveled west from Ohio after her uncle arranged her marriage to a rancher named Samuel Hayes. Clara had never seen Samuel. She knew only what her uncle had written in a letter. Samuel owned a large cattle ranch, needed a wife, and was willing to provide a respectable home. Clara had agreed because her family had lost nearly everything after her father's death, and her uncle made it clear that there was no room for refusal. "You will marry him," he had said. "It is your chance at a better life." But standing alone beside the station, Clara wondered whether she had simply traded one kind of hardship for another. She looked around for a man holding her name, but no one came. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, a tall cowboy wearing a weathered brown hat rode toward the station on a dark chestnut horse. His name was Daniel Carter, 32 years old, a quiet rancher known throughout the territory for keeping to himself. He stopped a few feet away and looked at Clara. "Miss Bennett?" he asked. Clara nodded nervously. "Are you Samuel Hayes?" His expression changed. "No," Clara's heart sank. "Then where is Mr. Hayes?" Daniel slowly removed his hat. "Samuel died 6 weeks ago." Clara stared at him in disbelief. The letter arranging her journey had been written before his death, and apparently no one had thought to tell her. She looked down at her suitcase, suddenly feeling as though the entire world had abandoned her. "Then I suppose I should go home," she whispered. Daniel studied her face. "Do you have money for the trip?" Clara said nothing. That silence was enough. Daniel understood. "Where were you planning to stay tonight?" "I don't know." He looked toward the fading sunlight. "There's no respectable boarding house with an empty room tonight." "You can stay at my ranch until you decide what to do." Clara immediately shook her head. "I couldn't impose." "You're not imposing," Daniel replied. "You're stranded." His simple words nearly made her cry. That evening, Clara followed Daniel to his ranch, a modest but beautiful spread surrounded by open prairie and distant mountains. Daniel gave her the small guest room, then left without asking questions. For the first time in months, Clara slept without fear. Over the next few days, Daniel never treated her like a burden. He gave her space, helped her find work, and even offered to pay for a train ticket back east. But Clara discovered that she no longer wanted to return to the life she had left behind. Her uncle's house had never felt like home. Daniel's ranch, however, slowly began to feel like one. Clara started helping in the kitchen, tending the garden and keeping the ranch accounts. Daniel was surprised to discover that she was excellent with numbers. Soon, she found mistakes in his old bookkeeping that had cost him hundreds of dollars. "You saved my ranch money," he told her one evening. Clara smiled. "Perhaps I'm more useful than a mail-order bride." Daniel looked at her seriously. "I never wanted a bride sent to me." Clara lowered her eyes. "Neither did I." Their friendship grew quietly. Daniel began teaching Clara to ride, and Clara taught him that silence did not have to mean loneliness. But trouble arrived when Samuel Hayes' older brother, Thomas, came to the ranch claiming that Clara had been promised to Samuel and therefore belonged to the Hayes family. Daniel immediately stepped between them. "She belongs to nobody," he said firmly. Thomas laughed. "You're protecting a woman who isn't even yours?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Exactly. Because she doesn't need to be mine for me to protect her." Clara heard those words from the doorway, and something inside her changed. For the first time in her life, A man had defended her without demanding anything in return. Thomas threatened legal action, claiming Clara's marriage arrangement gave him rights over her. But Daniel helped her contact a lawyer in town. The lawyer confirmed what Daniel already believed. Clara had never married Samuel, and no man had any legal claim over her. Thomas eventually left, but before departing he warned, "Daniel, that life on the frontier was dangerous for a man who challenged powerful families." Daniel simply watched him ride away. A week later, Daniel was injured while checking a fence line after a storm. Clara found him bleeding beside his horse and helped him back to the ranch. She stayed awake all night caring for him. When Daniel finally opened his eyes, Clara was sitting beside his bed. "Why did you stay?" he whispered. Clara smiled through tired eyes. "Because you stayed for me when you didn't have to." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "Clara, I don't want you here because you have nowhere else to go. I want you here because this ranch feels different when you're in it." Tears filled her eyes. "Are you asking me to stay?" Daniel nodded. "I'm asking you to choose." Clara reached for his hand. "Then I choose to stay." Months passed, and Clara transformed the ranch in ways neither of them expected. She expanded the garden, organized the accounts, and helped Daniel turn the failing cattle operation into one of the most successful ranches in the county. But the greatest change happened between them. Daniel, once known as the loneliest cowboy in Red Hollow, began smiling again. Clara, once sent west as someone else's unwanted bride, discovered that her life belonged to her. One autumn evening, beneath a golden Wyoming sunset, Daniel stood beside the ranch fence holding a small silver ring. "This isn't something your family arranged," he said. "It isn't a bargain and it isn't a debt. If you say no, I'll still make sure you always have a home here." Clara looked at the ring and then at the man who had given her something more valuable than wealth. He had given her a choice. She smiled. "Daniel, I came here because someone else decided my future. I'll stay because I decided it myself." Daniel placed the ring on her finger, and Clara leaned against his shoulder as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. She had arrived in Wyoming believing she was being sent to marry a stranger. Instead, she found a home, a purpose, and a man who loved her enough to let her choose her own future. And Daniel discovered that sometimes the greatest love story begins not with a promise, but with two lonely people giving each other the freedom to become who they were meant to be. Years later, people in Red Hollow would still talk about the woman who arrived with one suitcase and no future, then helped build one of the finest ranches in the territory. They would say she had been sent west to marry a stranger, but Clara always corrected them with a smile. "No, I was sent west because someone else thought they knew my destiny. I stayed because I finally found the courage to choose it myself." Story outro. And that is the story of Clara and Daniel, a story about second chances, unexpected kindness, and the freedom to choose your own life. Sometimes the person who changes your world is not the one you were searching for, but the one who gives you the courage to start again. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who loves emotional Western stories, and subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable tales from the Old West. Thank you for watching. And until our next story, remember, one act of kindness can change an entire life.